Hello and welcome to Quartzlight, your car brochure channel, and in today's episode, this very late 1982 sales brochure for the Ford Cortina Mark V. Welcome back, and if you're new to Quartzlight, we're a car brochure channel here on YouTube looking at car brochures from around the world for the 60s, 70s, 80s and 90s and sometimes beyond that as well. So if you're into cars and car brochures, please consider subscribing. Anyway, back to today's episode. The Mark V Ford Cortina, and regular viewers will know Fridays it's called Ford Friday. Every Friday we look at a Ford. So the Mark V Cortina ran from 79 till 1982. So this is quite an interesting brochure actually, as it's dated August 1982, so very late actually, especially when you think the last Cortina, which was a silver Crusader, rolled off the Dagenham production line on the 22nd of July 1982. So in effect this makes it the final incarnation of the Ford Cortina with all the sort of equipment levels the final models had. So effectively, if you was looking through this brochure, all the Cortinas had now been built and kind of like sitting on the forecourt at your dealership. And also, interesting thing about this brochure is on the back page has got the prices. The price has been crossed out, presumably because the prices were no longer relevant, because, you know, Sierra would have been out and I'm sure they were heavily discounted, but we'll certainly come to that in the end. But certainly lots of Cortinas still around at this time. In fact, a few, amazingly, were still leaving the forecourts as late as 1987. Just think about that. What an old car you was kind of like buying if you was buying him in 87. And apparently saw the final unregistered Cortina, which was a GL model, left a Derbyshire dealership in, now wait for this, 2005. So, you know, that's extremely late, isn't it? So there were certainly lots of them at the end. The nice thing about this brochure, you kind of like in the mindset of the buyer at the time. New Sierra, too futuristic looking, you know, it's a hatchback. You prefer a more of a traditional design car. You still wanted a Cortina, so you bought these for a good discounted price with all the toys at a good price, particularly if you went for a Crusader, of course. And then, of course, the other side of it, you know, you couldn't quite afford a Sierra, so these were heavily discounted, or you could move up to a higher spec model. Ooh, I've always wanted a Cortina Ghia, for example. What a great time to buy one. Anyway, enough waffle. This particular brochure says Ford Cortina, more than ever, a car above comparison. Ford gives you more, of course, was the kind of the catchphrase at the time. Also having a dealer stamp on this one, so let's zoom in on the dealer stamp. Market Garages, 23 Bishopsgate in London. So this is where this brochure originally came from. Now the first picture, a really nice picture of a Crusader in this two-tone colour. Remember the Crusaders? I certainly did. They sold really well and they looked pretty nice, that two-tone colour. Now the Crusader, more of like a special edition model, kind of the final throw of the dice. We're not going to look at the Crusader today because I'm going to save that for tomorrow. Saturdays we look at special edition models, so I'm going to look at this Crusader model tomorrow. And obviously if you're looking at this, I'll try and link this particular Crusader with the rest of the range when I finalise all the videos. But like I said, for those who are watching it today on Friday, look out for the Crusader tomorrow. But today we're going to stick with the normal range at the time. And the normal range at the time started with this, the Cortina Saloon. Think not even an L, real budget motoring, and presumably at a great price to buy right at the end. So let's have a look at some of the text, some of the kind of like key features, and remember these late ones had a few extras on there that the previous models didn't have, kind of like the final throw of the dice of the Cortina. Ford always used to try and add a few little extra bits and pieces to tempt you to get rid of the remaining stock. Anyway, let's jump in with the text first. So first of all, from the images, you can get this base model. Either there's this unusual 2-door model or the standard sort of 4-door saloon. Engines, tiny little 1300 or a 1600. 1600 only on the 4-door model, so that 2-door model was a super basic, wasn't it, if you got that as a 1300, with a single variable Venturi carburetor and automatic choke. Transmission, getting a little bit old-fashioned, isn't it? 4-speed manual gearbox. We're kind of like thinking more about 5 speeds now, of course, with a synchromesh on all forward gears, remote floor-mounted gear shift, self-adjusting diaphragm spring clutch. Bit of information there about the suspension and steering, of course, rack and pinion. I'm not going to read all the information, otherwise this brochure review will be too long, but of course you can pause the screen at any time. Brakes, hydraulic dual line, front discs, rear drums. Then we've got some information on these steel wheels, lighting and electrical, and the body. So we've got laminated windscreen, 2 or 4 doors on the 1300, 4-door on the 1600, body side tape stripe. Now, body side tape stripe doesn't sound much, but this is a super basic model, so they've kindly given you a little bit of a stripe. Black finish 4-bar louvered radiator grille. So yeah, we've got a black radiator. Black bumpers, wraparound end caps. Black drip rail, windscreen and rear window inserts. So you notice with these base models, none of that sort of like bright inserts. Black rocker panel with windscreen wipers, anti-burst door locks and childproof locks on rear doors. Black driver's door mirror, luggage compartment and the size, spare wheel housed in the luggage compartment, and fuel tank locking cap, which apparently was a new feature for the time. And then the interior equipment, not going to read it all, but like I say, you can pause if you want to see it. Glove box with lid, trinket tray, coat hooks. Not the highest spec, like I say, but you know, it had all the little bits that you needed, I guess, for a very base model. And this kind of like sums up the final base model Cortina. 1300 or 1600, servo assisted self-adjusting front disc brakes, laminated windscreen, rear fog lamps, window mounted spring back rear view mirror, viscous coupled fan, radial ply tyres, illuminated fascia switches, door bins, and like I say, that new feature, a fuel tank locking cap. And then we get some nice little images of this 4-door example in this beige colour of this very basic but functional model. And the inside, very basic on the inside. Them seats look a little bit cheap, don't they? No head restraints on there, but you know, you got a lot more on these than you did on the very base model when the Mark V first came out. But when you move up to the L, as we see here, you do get a lot of much nicer features. You can certainly see straight away those nice sort of chrome type bumpers with the overriders, which I think really lifts the car, and of course that interior is a million times nicer, so I think it was certainly worth moving up to at least the L model at this time. Anyway, let's have a look at some of the text. Starts off showing same idea as with the base model, that 2-door and the 4-door available. Engines, the same sort of idea as the base model. Transmission, same sort of idea. In fact, of course, the suspension, steering, brakes, wheels and tyres, all identical to that base model. Lighting and electrical, looks like we've got as that base model, but with a 45 amp alternator and halogen headlamps. Body, now we've added bright bumpers, body side mouldings, opening rear quarter vents, badge on the boot lid, and a black side window frames, as well as a passenger door mirror. And of course, you know, passenger door mirrors were starting to become more popular. Now the additions on the interior really make a difference, I think. Seats much nicer, York fabric trim seat, adjustable head restraints, perforated headlining, 2 rear grab handles, hang down centre console unit, a vanity mirror, seat valances, a Ford P21 push button radio, colour key carpet in passenger compartment, 2-speed wipers with intermittent wipe control, rear centre armrest, clock, trip meter, instrument rheostat, illuminated ashtray, boot lights and bright fascia panels. So surely there was plenty there to tempt you to move to the L. Now the nice thing at this time on these L models and above, you could get the S pack. Remember the Cortina S? Kind of like a standalone model at one time, but now it's kind of like a pack. So you could add, even on an L model, 1600 OXE with twin Venturi carburetors, manual only, overriders, driving lamps, S badge on boot, tachometer, 4-spoke steering wheel, revised suspension settings, front gas shock absorbers, sports gear lever knob, sports road wheels, different tyres and an optional Recaro sports seat. So that was quite a nice option to add even on this L model, which would have really lifted it. And it does note that the car illustrated is a Cortina L 4-door in diamond white. Options fitted at extra costs are the sports road wheels, driving lamps with overriders and rear seat belts. So I don't think it's the actual S pack it's got it on it, but certainly some extras. So keep that in mind when you look at the images. You can sum up the L model by telling you, it's got this push button radio, 2-speed wipers, centre console unit, body side mouldings, York fabric interior trim, adjustable head restraints and that new fuel tank locking cap. So certainly a step up of that base model, but like I say, them overriders are an optional extra, as are those sports wheels. And you can just about make out them front spot lamps, which would also be an optional extra on this base model. There is a little bit of a better shot of those spotlights. Certainly, as you can see from this image, it's not the S pack though, because the S pack, like we kind of discussed briefly, had a 4-spoke steering wheel. And that is that interior on the L. Like I said, that's a huge step up. Certainly them seats are a huge step up from that base model, aren't they? Now we're starting to get a bit fancy, aren't we? The GL. Kind of like I always think, you get into the more fancy models, and I'm sure the GL model was a model that suited a lot of people because, it wasn't expensive as the gear, but certainly added a few nice features. Anyway, this particular model is in Titan Blue. We'll have a look at some of the specs. So you can only have the GL as a 4-door, as you can see. Available no longer at 1300, of course, because we can't get it as a 2-door. So a 1600 was your base model. You could also have a 2-litre though, and even a 2.3 V6 if you wasn't too worried about fuel costs. Transmission's the same as the Cortina Saloon, suspension and steering as the Cortina Saloon, but with power assisted steering with a 2.3 litre V6 and a 4-spoke steering wheel, which would have been kind of like the one you would have got, I presume, with the S pack on that base L model, if of course you added the S pack. Brakes as the Cortina Saloon, but with 9-inch rear drums with 2000 and 2.3 litre engines. We're getting sports road wheels with wheel trim embellishers just to make it a little bit fancier. Light and electrical as the Cortina Saloon, but with a 45 amp alternator with halogen headlamps. Electronic brakeless ignition with the 2.3 litre V6. The body, only a 4-door model, remember. We've got bright bumpers, body side mouldings, GL badge on the boot lid, carpet in the boot, bright belt rail mouldings, remote control driver's door mirror, black side window frames, passenger door mirrors, overriders and tinted glass. And then the interior as with the Cortina Saloon, but crushed velour and Chelsea fabric trim seats. You always know I do like velour seats. I don't know about you, I kind of prefer them over leather actually. So a model that probably would have suited me really well. Ford P21 push button radio, perforated headlining, 2 rear grab handles, glove box with lamp, full centre console, vanity mirror, seat valances, colour keyed loop pile carpet in passenger compartments, trip recorder, quartz clock, simulated wood grain fascia. Yes, you didn't have to go to the gear to get a nice wood grain fascia. Door bins, rear centre armrests, 2-speed wipers and intermittent wipe control, carpeted rear partial shelf with boot, door trims with Chelsea fabric inserts, dipping rear view mirror, adjustable head restraints, illuminated ashtray and a boot courtesy light. Does just confirm that this particular GL is in Titan Blue. Options fitted at an extra cost, of course, are the metallic paint, because Titan Blue was a metallic paint, and also a push button radio MW LW stereo cassette was optioned on this particular one. You can also option it with the having the S pack on there if you wanted driving lamps, S badge on the boot, tachometer, revised suspension settings from gas shock absorbers, sports gear lever knob, different tyres and Recaro seats. Although it looks like you didn't have to have the Recaro seats, so you could possibly get that S pack a little bit cheaper. You couldn't get it with the 1600 though, apparently. Not on the GL model anyway. And there we go, a little bit of a recap of what you got on the GL model. Picture wise, pretty nice in Titan Blue was kind of like my first thought when I saw this. We also get a little bit of a front view. Again, it's not got the S pack on there, so we don't get them sports spotlights on the front. We do, however, get the sports steering wheel, and this has got that optional extra radio cassette player in there, and of course that wood inserts. No rev counter though. Seats wise, I do really like the seats on this actually. It does look a very pleasant place to be in that lovely velour. As we turn the page, I think this was the model you really aspired to own really. The Cortina gear. And then particularly if you added the S back on there, you got a really nice motor car. This particular colour is Venus Gold, and I think it really suits the car as well. Anyway, let's zoom in on the text. So there we go, the Cortina gear. 4-door only again, 1600, 2 litre or a 2.3 V6. Transmission's the same, steering and suspension is the same with power assisted steering for the 2.3 litre V6 and that 4-spoke steering wheel. Brakes the same but with a looks like a larger rear drum. Wheels and tyres, light alloy road wheels, so yes, you even get a nice alloy wheel on these late Cortinas. How lovely. Light and electrical, I think the key thing there is power operated radio aerial. How fancy. Body, as with the Cortina Saloon, but we add things, you know, bright bumpers of course, protected body side mouldings, front and rear overriders, the all important gear badge on the boot lid and fender, bright belt rail mouldings, petrol tank locking cap, heated and electrically adjustable remote control drivers and passengers door mirrors. Heated door mirrors. You know, these end of the line Cortinas were pretty nice, weren't they? Particularly if you stepped up to a gear. You also got tinted glass, body side tape stripe and a steel sliding roof. Interior, you get a Chatsworth and crushed velour fabric trim, seat valances, perforated headlining, 2 grab handles, etc, etc. Of course, it's a year, so you get a simulated wood grain fascia. And of course you can read all this and pause it if you want to read everything on here, but obviously we're getting to a gear, so it's getting a bit extensive of course. Looks like you get this nice radio stereo cassette though. Wood veneer door cappings, rear seat centre armrests, quartz clock of course, a tachometer now, very nice, and a sports gear shift knob by the looks of it. It tells us the car illustrated though, like I say, it's Venus Gold. Does have options, of course the paint was an option. It looks like we're going to option a push button all electric multi-feature stereo radio on this example. We must remember to have a look at that. Driving lamps, optional extra. Headlamp wash. Nice feature on a Cortina. I don't think I've seen a Cortina with headlamp wash, so that was an interesting extra. It's also telling us the tailpipe trim illustrated is not fitted as standard equipment. But you still could get the S-Pack. Obviously you get less on the S-Pack now, but you get driving lamps, revised suspension settings and front gas shock absorbers, but it's not available on the 1600 Ghia. And then really, there we go, really a little bit of a sum up of what you got on that Ghia model. Let's have a look at those all important images though. And there we go. It just looks a nice car, doesn't it? I like them little spotlights they've got an extra, optional extra on there. Of course the Ghia badge there. I really like those alloy wheels though, that really lifts the car, I think. A little bit of a look at the back, and you can see that exhaust which it's saying is not standard, that little bit of a chrome tip. Nice little view at the back if you're behind it though. This particular model, a 2.3 Ghia. Interior trim, all of the fancy, particularly like these seats in this velour, these two-tone colours look very nice, and of course we can see that wood capping on the top of the doors. 4-spoke steering wheel, of course, we now do get a rev counter. Wood inserts again, a little bit of a clock. This is an automatic, as you can see, and that sort of special little radio. I don't know if I can zoom in anymore. Doesn't look all that special today, of course, but I guess a little bit of a special radio for the time. We get this double-sided sheet telling us about, we can also get the Cortina estate cars at this late time. Estate cars similar to the saloon cars, actually. You can get the base model, not even an L, the GL and the Ghia. I'm not going to go through all the specifications, although there is something interesting I'll zoom in on. You could get something called the business pack on the estate models. To meet the requirements of users who want a high payload estate, a special pack is available as an option at extra cost. The pack is available on the Cortina estate and L with the 1600cc engine and 2-litre GL estate, and it consists of we've got reinforced radial ply tyres, economy road wheels, upgraded suspension, reinforced rear axle casings, large rear brake drums on the 1600. These fixtures give an increase in payload capacity from £935 to £1,216, so quite the increase. It also goes on to say the business pack is not available with the automatic transmission or with alternative wheel tyre combinations or the S-Pack options. I guess due to, you know, the requirements of having to bring it up to that increased payload, but certainly an interesting pack nevertheless. So this particular example is in cardinal red. It is just the 1.6L actually, but obviously it's got optional sports wheels on it. There's a little bit of a front view. The rear, you just about make out there it's a 1.6L, like I say, with these optional sports wheels, but certainly a very practical car for its time. But we can sum up the Cortina estate by saying it's got a top hinge, counterbalanced tailgate, 4 doors with childproof locks on rear doors, radial ply tyres, laminated windscreen, servo assisted front disc brakes, tailgate wash wipe on the L, GL and Ghia, and the optional business pack on the Cortina estate, L estate and 2-litre GL estate. So base model L and GL could have that business pack to increase the payload, which I'm sure was quite a useful little thing if you really were carrying a lot of things around. I wonder how many of them were sold with that business pack on. And then at the bottom here, the Cortina price guide, I'm sure was correct at time of printing. Somebody scribbled it out, I'm sure, at the dealership, because obviously brochures would have been around for a long time, and I'm sure they didn't print any after this. And I'm sure they became heavily discounted to get rid of them, to make room for the Sierra, of course. But that very base 1300 two-door was £4,515 and 10. Although, like I say, I'm sure you could get it for less than that. But, you know, a big range there. The most expensive model, of course, was that 2.3 Ghia Estate, £8,613.75, which was certainly a lot of money in 1982. But if we get a little bit more sensible, I did particularly like the gear, so maybe a 2-litre gear would have been very nice. £7,228. If you couldn't quite afford that, maybe a 2-litre GL would have been certainly a nice car at £6,383.54. Like I say, I'm sure you could have got them heavily discounted at the time. And then we'll just end with a little bit of it, the address, the car advertising department. Date of this brochure is, well, in fact, you know, the date of the brochure really is probably September 82, but there is an August 82 there as well. So certainly a very late brochure, and a brochure that was out at the dealerships when really the Cortina was no longer being built. But a nice alternative for those who were still a little bit wary of this new jelly mold shaped Sierra. So there we go, kind of like the final specs for the Ford Cortina Mark V. So very interesting. And don't forget, we've looked at the full range there, but we did skip over the Crusader. We do also have the price list of the Crusader. So tomorrow we'll have a look at that special edition Crusader, the features you got on that model and how it was competitively priced, meaning, you know, it was probably a model that looked really good and certainly sold really well as well. Thank you so much for watching Quartz Light today. Many more episodes coming up very soon, so please do like and subscribe. Have a great weekend. Take care and goodbye.